शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां घटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ॐ ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवरभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया माम् उपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मत्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्न कर्म कृत् ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्म हविर् ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यम् ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तत्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानम् ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं कृत्स्नं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः छित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैवं सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः
Very nice. Thank you, Rakesh. Acha. So we were chapter 7, this verse 16. Huh?
Yes, Professor. We finished 15 last.
Right. Acha. So in the previous verses, let us have a brief recap. So Bhagavan says, start off by saying, with your mind set on me, O Arjuna, dependent on me performing yoga, hear how you will know me wholly without any doubt whatsoever. Mai asakta manaha partha yogam yunjan madashrayah asamshayam samagram mam yatha jnasyasi tachruno. Then he is setting forth, this is jnana vijnana yoga. So jnana, I told you, is the self-knowledge, Brahma Vidya. After that, the realization that follows and the outward behavior that is presented by those who are have that knowledge is called Vijnana. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyami asheshatah. So this is an exhaustive treatment of both the paths to self-knowledge itself, and the consequent vision of the realized. Yajnatva neha bhuyo anyat gyatavyam avashishyate. Once there will be nothing more to be known, once it is grasped. Then Bhagavan says how very rare person strives to know. And this is very true from experience. You can see this. Among 1,000, and this was written in the time of the Dwapara Yuga. We are now many years past that. Among thousands, he says, one strives. And even among those who strive, you may say again 1 in 1,000 at least, only one comes to know me in truth. Kaschin mam veti tatvatah. So then Bhagavan says, what is my true nature? So he's explaining his true nature, verses 4 onwards. He says how the bhumi, apaha, and analaha, vayu, kham, mano, buddhir, these various forms, both the Pancha Mahabhutas as well as the Sukshma aspect, Ahankaram also, etc., are my eightfold nature of Prakriti. That is my lower nature. And then he says, my higher nature, which other than Prakriti, that constitutes mighty arm, the living being, Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho, Yaya Idam Dharyate Jagat, by which this whole world is upheld. So all beings are born of this dual nature, Purusha and Prakriti, we may understand in the yoga philosophy or Sankhya philosophy. And I am the source of the entire world as much, as well as that into which it is dissolved. And then this beautiful verse which we talked about, how everything is strung on me like clusters of gems on a thread. Mayi sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. Then Bhagavan says, the question there being, by what traits is this entire world woven on you? How is one to distinguish you? So then Bhagavan says, Raso aham apsu, we talked about that. Kaunteya, Prabha asvi shashi surya yoho. The light of the sun and the moon. I am the sacred syllable Om in all the Vedas. Pranavaha sarvavedeshu, Shabdaha Khe, Paurusham, Nrushu, manhood in men, etc., etc. And then we discussed these points. What does it mean to be the essence of the Mahabhutas, the Tanmatras, etc. Eternal seed grower, seed power, Bijam Mam Sarvabhutana. And then Buddhi Matam, I am Buddhi. And I am strength, might, which is devoid of appetite and attachment. Balam, balavatam asmi, kamaraga vivarjitam. And then I am that kamaha which is not opposed to dharma. Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu, kamo asmi bharatashu. And then he says, whatever sattvic, rajasic, tamasic things, know them to proceed from me alone. I am not in them, they are in me, meaning that Bhagavan is not subject to the gunas, but the creations that are perceived are. The jivas, as long as they do not identify with Bhagavan, are subject to the gunas. Then, Tribhir Gunamayai Bhavair Ebihi Sarvamidam Jagat. Due to this three constituents of the gunas, the whole world is deluded. Na abhijanati mam ebhyah paramabhyam, does not see me, fails to cognize me, the immutable reality beyond them. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya, hard to cross. Mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Those who surrender themselves exclusively to me. This surrender is very hard. Even for the apparently pious, this surrender is very hard. And the absence of surrender manifests as ignorance. Who are the type who don't surrender? Namam dushkrutino moodhaha, dull-witted ones, base, deluded, prapadyanti nara adhamaha, mayaya apakrita jnana, they have been robbed of their knowledge, and they assume asuram bhavam asrita. They assume a demoniac attitude. So then Bhagavan then gives the description, who are on the contrary, ye punaha narottamaha punya karmanaha. On the contrary, the best among men are those who do good. So then will someone read verse 16?
I can go.
Please.
Chaturvidha bhajante mam janah sukratino arjuna arto jigyasu artharthi jnani cha bharatarshabha.
Very nice. This is a very important verse and a very powerful verse. Chaturvidha bhajante iti. Chaturvidha, fourfold, four types. Bhajante, surrender to me or worship me. Mam, janaha, sukritinaha, Arjuna. Righteous, men of righteous acts, those who have done good things. They are fourfold. Who surrender to me? And what are those fourfold? Arto. Arti is the person who is distressed. Jigyasu. Artharthi Jnani cha Bharatarshava. The distressed, the knowledge seeker, wealth seeker, and the Jnani himself. O bull among the Bharatas, Bharatarshava. These are the 4 types of men who surrender to me, men of good works. So, why this verse is very important is it also goes in tandem with the evolution of the sadhak on the path. So, by becoming aware of Bhagavan's classification, the aspirant can gauge what is one's progress and what is the remaining, what kind of refinement, purification of the mind is desired in order to become one with the Lord, attain the goal, the siddhi of sadhana, etc. Right. So first of all, Bhagavan doesn't even talk of the ones who, we may say, have no faith at all, or their faith is only in material things. Right. If we bring it to our practical world, if you go out and take a poll of 100 people in AIIMS, right? Let us say, for the sake of argument, you may find some people who say, yes, I have, they may, a few may boldly and without hesitation say, I am a follower of Sanatana Dharma. I will raise my hand and be counted as one of who follows Sanatana Dharma. I am a Hindu. I am proud to be a Hindu. I have faith in the Vedas. I accept the authority of the Veda. And I am committed to both knowing it, protecting it, nurturing it, nourishing it. Right? You may meet some rare ones like that. Then you may meet others. They may be born in Hindu families or they may be born in other families. There may be people of other faiths who have faith. And later you will see Bhagavan says that all those who worship, even without taking me by name, they only come to me. Although their ways are different. But then there are some also who have no faith in any notion beyond the material world. Right? There's also there. And they may be born in Hindu families or they may be born in other families. Okay, so there are really 3 classes. Those with no faith other than the material, those with faith beyond the material, and those with faith beyond the material who accept the authority of the Veda and Bhagavan as Lord Vishnu, incarnated as Sri Krishna. Right? Of the ones who have no faith in anything beyond the material world, not much can be said beyond that. Bhagavan is not even discussing them in this 4-fold. Right? He treats the ones who worship him in ways other than avidhivat in another verse, where he points out that in some convoluted, roundabout way, in the way they come to him only, but they may not know it. Right? The beauty of our Hinduism and its liberality and the vision from the highest point is not that those who do not follow Hinduism are heathens and pagans and condemned to the worst, whatever, and all that. Those with faith in any other form also eventually only pray to the ultimate, because there is only one truth. It is only that in their limitation, they are not able to see that the truth manifests in different forms. So that liberal outlook is there. So then Bhagavan says, okay, now what about these other, let us now restrict ourselves to the class of those who have faith in me and they come to me. So what nature are these 4? And again, we can understand this in a guna classification also. The first one is arti, the distressed. This is the adhama form of bhakt. Quite honestly, I'll tell you bluntly. This is the adhama form of the bhakt. The one who cries out in, oh, oh Lord, I am in distress. My body is hurting. My mind is hurting. Please save me. Right? It is okay. It is a kindergarten state. That's fine. Everybody has to start at kindergarten also sometimes. right? Those who are in the other levels may have completed this in previous births. And why is this adhama? Because that mind is predominantly overwhelmed by mostly tamas and rajas. Only under the yoke of pain does that mind remember the Lord. But at least it remembers the Lord. So that way, it is still in the upper third of the classification. Correct? Now, Swami Ram used to have a very beautiful thing. You see, mostly when somebody suffers a bereavement in the family, immediately for a little while at least, their religiosity and relation to the Lord will improve. We call this Smashana Vairagyam. The moment that person is taken to the cremation ground for about 10 days to 13 days, there will be sudden faith in the Lord. Okay, not bad. It's a start, right? But that is the arti, correct? Okay. It is a stepping stone. Hopefully, sometimes through that loss, there may be a change. You see, Kabir Das also says, right? दुख में सुमिरन सब करे, सुख में करे न कोई. जो सुख में सुमिरन करे, दुख काहे को होय. So he says, in the time of distress, of course, he was a holy man, and in his time, he only associated with holy people. So he said, everybody in the time of distress prays to God. Okay, probably a different time and place. And he said, but in the time of happiness, nobody turns to God. That was his observation. He said, if those who turn to their mind to God, even in time of happiness, for them, there is no sadness at all. There is no depression. There is no dukkha, daurmanasya. These are not there. So this is the state of the arti. And the arti will progress. You see, that is why it is highly recommended at the time of the bereavement, when somebody in the family passes away, 10 days of mourning. Then 11 and 12, there are other kriyas. These are called apara kriyas. They're very important. 13th day, Shubha Swikaram. In the 10 days, there is to be reading of the Garuda Puran. And if they are very sattvic family, they may read Kathopanishad. Okay. And I'll come back to this, why this is important. It is because, you see, until the mind becomes really ripe, it does not see the importance of this study and activity. You see, we may study many things. And in the beginning, Bhagavad Gita study will also be something like, okay, I go and learn badminton, I learn some music, I'm also taking this class, right? It is sort of at that level. It's another activity, another hobby, another vocation, right? It's how it starts. That's okay. It should start somewhere. But when the mind attains a ripeness, a next level, then it starts to realize that this is the most important activity. Okay, why is this activity so important? Okay, that is only when the mind thinks what will happen at the time of death. Now, you see, normally we try to invite and enthuse people with the positive aspects, which are there. I mentioned right at the beginning, so many positive aspects of studying the Bhagavad Gita. But the mind is not only easy in certain people, well, heavily overwhelmed by tamas, okay? In which case, tamas you can only overcome by giving it a rod, a whacking. That is rajas. Only with rajas you can awaken the spirit in the highly tamasic individual. It's also true that in all of us, even the very sattvic ones, the mind cycles. So there may occasionally be a little dip into tamas. At that time, we must know when to give the mind the danda, right? When to self-regulate it. Do you see what I'm trying to say? The regulation that Bhagavan intended was also for the society, but also for the individual, correct? So that is why this importance of understanding what will happen at the time of death. The single most important question is, do you know what to do at the time of death? If you know that, you have achieved the purpose of life. If you don't know that, then you have some work to do. Correct? And why do I say this? It's because very legitimately through our life, we go through the various stages, whether you think in ashramas or otherwise, we study. Let us take more practical approach. We grow up, we learn something, we go to college, we qualify ourselves in some skill or vocational school, something. We want to earn a living. Every human being tries to earn their wage honestly. Then marriage, children, etc. This is the normal path, you may say. When I say normal, I'm not giving it a value judgment of good or bad. This is how most of if it's a percentage. Statistically, this is what most people do. Okay. So then the money earned honestly can feed you and the family. Maybe if something is remaining, given in charity, very good. This is the normal life. Okay. What happens at the time of death? At the instant of death, right? None of the activities over the whole life do anything. What can they do for you? The education, however high a degree we get, PhD is the highest nowadays, right? Whether a human being is PhD or he is sixth class fail, at the time of death, there's no difference. The PhD does not answer you the question, what should I do at the time of death? Does it? I'm not saying it's useless. PhD is useful in this world, in the Bhulokam. Yes, but is it helpful at the time of death? No. You know no better after getting the PhD what to do at the time of death than the guy who's sixth class failed. Yes or no? Nobody will disagree with me, right? Okay. What about wealth? Wealth, we clearly know it doesn't avail, right? Whether you leave it in the bank account or in big stacks of gold, it cannot go with you wherever you go, because obviously you leave somewhere. That body is not moving anymore after death, right? So that is only in this world. Your nominees and beneficiaries may do something with it, but your chance to enjoy that wealth is over. Correct? Okay. Then next thing, we are all very attached to our family. Oh, mother, oh, father, oh, child. They can't do diddly for you. At the time of death, they will all sit and wring their hands if they're around. That's all. They cannot help you. Am I wrong or right? Right? They cannot. So you need to know what to do. Right? And that is the whole point of it. And that is why the study is important, because no amount of badminton playing or the musical activities or all those other things that we do to pass the time or whatever it is, hobby, study, anything you name, none of those give that answer. Right? And it's kind of foolish to spend 80 years, whatever your lifespan is, to come to the last point and not know this answer. Yes, do you agree with me? Yeah? At the culmination, it's kind of goofy. It's like running the whole race and not knowing how to breast the tape. Right? I would classify such a person a complete idiot. You started off on a race and you didn't know where to run across the tape to the finish line. Then you have to start the race again. Right? Disqualified. Sent again. So this is the whole point. That is why this study is important. So Bhagavan says, if you just scream out to me when you're in distress, okay, but come on, move a little bit beyond that, right? Okay. So this is the whole point, that one should know the mystery of how I was born and what will happen at the time when the pranas leave the body. And how should I conduct myself so that this birth, the purpose of this birth is achieved, right? If one knows that, then rest of the activities can proceed quite jollily, no difference, no problem, right? But now you have your ticket, right? When you come, you know how to breast the tape, board the bus, and you're done. Don't you think that's a nice thing, right? You can go about all your other activities also, right? But nobody's going to send you back to the starting line. right? That's the jolly thing. And Bhagavan says, listen, you can do this, right? Once you surrender yourself to me, I will teach you, okay? And that's what he's doing here, right? So Arti, lowest. Next one, this is a little bit out of order in the verse, Artharthi. Okay, now the next kind of person is a little more intelligent. This one has a little greater proportion of rajas rather than tamas, and recognizes that for the gain of wealth, the Lord is central. They have little more vision, understanding that without the Lord, I cannot gain many things in this material world easily. Right? This is intelligence, great intelligence. Right? So they know that, okay, I have to do these kamya pujas, whatnot. I will get these things. This Lord is a mechanism. I will do. Okay. Second class. Okay, not bad. What is it? BA third class, BA second class, then BA first class. Then we have Jnanarthi, Jigyasu, or Jnanarthi, you can say. The Jigyasu is special because this one has recognized that there is something deeper. The earlier verse that we read, Sarva Karma Akhilam Partha Jnane Parisamapyate. This Jigyasu has understood the importance of that verse. He says that, yes, okay, we have all these karmas, but Bhagavan has said they all culminate in knowledge. So what is this knowledge? Jigyasu. Right? So Bhagavan has given them, this person has a preponderance of sattva compared to the other two. They are interested in illumination, the light of the mind, the intelligence of the mind. That person wants to know, right? And not know just the kind of things we study in PhD and other things. Want to know something deeper, right? Why was I born? What should I do at the time of departure? Who is this Lord? Where is this Lord, right? What is my purpose on this earth? How should I behave in order to be in harmony with this Rita, this natural law that the Bhagavan has set forth? These are the questions that animate the Jigyasu, right? Okay. So then Bhagavan says, this Jigyasu is very, of course, among the three. But then, the one who, having pursued that path of knowledge and attained it, Jnani, that Jnani doesn't run away from the Lord. That Jnani is permanently delighting in the Lord. So he also worships the Lord, right? Yeah. The Jnani manifested in the human form is not going to repudiate the very source of his intelligence. Right? He is going to be worshipping that intelligence at every instant. Right? So that is the fourfold type who are brought. So in our own thinking, we have to slowly evolve ourselves. First time, if a great calamity befell and we worship, good, okay, we started. At least at that time we thought of the Lord. Second, maybe through those bereavements, read the Garuda Purana. What are the consequences? What happens at the time of departure? You see, sometimes when we read those things in the Puranas, they seem so fanciful. Okay, we say, all this is not going to happen. I say, you just keep doing what you're doing. But you don't know, quite honestly, right? Right? The Garuda Purana talks about the Yamadutas and the journey to Yamalok. Okay, it talks about the judgment at Yamalok, the relative balance of punya and apunya. What are the consequences of those, right? You can disbelieve it. No problem, right? But do you know? Have you taken the paths outside? Do you know the way to exit from the northern path or the southern path? If you do not, then you must either make strenuous efforts to find the path, or one must take on faith the words of the guides who have gone, right? After all, these were not written by people with a particular idea to demean, distress, or mislead humanity, right? They wrote it only for the Sarva Bhuta Hiterataha. They were interested in the welfare of all humanity, right? These are the Vedavyas who divided the four Vedas, gave us all these things. Again and again, when he said, oh, man is not able to understand the Veda, right? In the early days, men lived 10,000 years, they say. one human being knew all the 4 Vedas. Okay. Then he said, life of man has become very short. Let me divide it into 4. Then when people were not understanding the Veda, he said, okay, let me then give them in form of Smriti. Right. Then he said, okay, now if that also is too hard, let me give them some Puranas. Let me give it to them in the form of story. Okay, if that is too hard, let me give them Mahabharat. Let me give them Itihasa. Right. Again and again, he was trying in strenuously and is always trying to explain to the human being the truth in different forms. Right? Because why? These people are desireless. When we think of the great gurus, they're desireless. They have no interest in harming you. Their only interest, if at all, in their actions is to help you. Right? So therefore, they set out these mechanisms. So it's for us to take or not take, right? So anyway, that if one takes the essence, the good news from that, Kathopanishad gives a different perspective. Kathopanishad in a different story form, that is part of the Ved, of course. In a Shruti, it tells you how does Nachiketa goes to Yama's abode, what does he find out from Yama, and etc. Very beautiful story form. Again, if you look at this Nitya Karma that we do called Sandhya Vandanam, in that there's one peculiar thing. I don't think this is there in other religions. We do something called Yama Vandanam. Every day, thrice a day, we worship the Lord of Death. Why? I have not know of this practice in other religions. It is to remind ourselves of the transitory nature of the life, to keep bringing back, so that it is not Smashana Vairagyam, so that Vairagyam is cultivated every day. And we are reminded, oh man, make effort every day to know the truth, because time is fleeting. We do not know when the pranas will leave the body. Have we purified the mind enough that we will know what to do at the time when the pranas leave the body? Will we even be aware when the pranas are leaving the body, right? Because when the body is in great pain, then the mind gets disturbed. It cannot then form its thoughts very logically. All that is learnt may be forgotten in a time of extreme pain, right? This is what every day the practice reminds us. It says, Yamaya Dharmarajaya. So then we say, Yama is not to be feared. He is not to be feared at all. You see, to the one who has faith and who knows the truth, Yama is not a fearful person. He is merely the first man. He is the first human being who crossed that path. So he stands there, right? He's not at all fearful. You see, Yama, another way to understand. We talk about Yama Niyam in yoga. Yama is a regulation, correct? Yama is regulation. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha are the Yamas, right? If you regulate now very successfully, he is the great regulator. He regulates the dharma. So if you're regulated yourself, you have nothing to fear from the great regulator. When he comes, you'll say, aha, you're my good friend. I know you. I've also regulated. So I understand. You have now come to take this physical manifestation and restore it to the 5 material elements. No problem. You do your job. I have done my job. There will be no fear of Yama. Okay? There will be an understanding of Yama. You will actually love Yama because he's doing his job. He has to do his job. Right? Yes or no? Right? But if that regulation is not possible at the time of departure, then yes, because then your attractions to the material world will be in conflict with Yama's dharma. And then it will be painful. Definitely it will be painful. Because at that time it will be confusing. The mind will not know which way to go. It will be confused. It will be in pain. Right? And if the wrong choice is made, it will result in more pain. Right? Therefore, it is wiser to take the advice of those who have traversed those paths. Right? And to take their advice. So Bhagavan is saying that. Anyway, moving on. So that is where the sadhaka evolves from arti to artharthi, improvement, to jigyasu. Right? Now, Jignasu is a good place to be. Okay. Chaturvidha iti. Chaturvidhaha, chaturprakaраha bhajante sevante. That is, they worship me, they resort to me. Mam janaha, sukrutinaha, the righteous, their acts are righteous or meritorious. Punya karmanaha, hey Arjuna. Artaha, arti parigrihitaha, the afflicted are those in the grip of suffering. Taskara, vyagra, rogadina, by robbers, vyagra, tigers, roga, various kinds of diseases. Vyagra, rogadina. I don't know why he has put snakes. Unless there is a mistype where it is uraga, this sounds rogadina. Roga, vyagra, roga sounds to me like disease. Abhibhutaha, apannaha. Jigyasuhu, bhagavat tattvam gyatum ichchati yaha. Jigyasu is the one who desires to know the truth of the Lord. Bhagavat tattvam. This bhaga, very important word, is the brilliance, it's the illumination, it's the light, right? It is the light which illuminates the eye itself. Who sees the eye? We use this eye to see other things, right? But who sees the eye? Say the mind sees the eye. Well, who illuminates the mind? That is Bhagavan, right? Who is the one who provides illumination even to the mind? So what is the tattvam? What is the essence of that illuminator, right? The one who wants to know that is called a jigyasu, right? Not knowing any other kind of knowledge, but to ask, who is the one who illuminates my own mind, right? Artharthi dhanakamaha, that we already talked about. He is desirous of wealth. Jnani Vishnoho tattvavit cha he Bharatarshava. The Jnani is the one who knows the truth about Vishnu. Okay. Next one, shall we read?
Tesam jnani nikta yukta eka bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi jnani notyartha maham sa cha mamam priyaha.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice. Tesham, of those, Jnani, the knower, Nitya Yukta, ever yoked, eternally yoked, Eka Bhaktihi Vishishyate, and exclusively devoted. He excels, he stands out. Priyaha, I am exceedingly dear. He, Jnaninaha, I am very dear to the Jnanis. Atyarthamaham, and he is dear to me. Aham cha sa mama priya, and he is also very dear to me. So teshamiti, tesham chaturnam madhye jnani tattvavitvat nitya yuktaha bhavati. Because he knows the truth, he is eternally yoked. Eka bhaktischa anyasya bhajaniyasya adarshanat. He is exclusively devoted because no one else is seen as deserving of devotion. Ataha saha eka bhaktihi vishishyate. He is exclusively devoted to the Lord. Vishesham adhikyam apadyate atirichyate ityartha. Priyaha hi asmat aham atma jnaninaha. Yeah, to exceedingly dear I am, being the self of the Lord, self with a capital S, right? So you see, Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya has translated bhakti itself. He says, Swarupa Anusandhanam Bhakti. The desire to know one's own true self is bhakti. As I said again, what is the light that illuminates the mind? Is the self. So therefore, to him, I am exceedingly dear because everyone loves the self. That the self is dear is a fact established in the world. Is exactly paralleling the next thought that came. Ataha tasya aham atyartha priyaha prasiddham hi loke atma priyaha bhavati iti. This is actually from the Shruti. It's well known. Tasmat jnaninaha atmatvat vasudevah priyah bhavati ityarthah. That the Vasudeva, being the self of the knower, is dear. This is the idea. Sacha jnani mama vasudevasya atma eva iti mama atyartham priyaha. Again, the knower is Vasudeva's self, and as such is exceedingly dear to me. Na tarhi artadayah trayah vasudevasya priyaha. Na kim tarhi. Then are not the first three, the afflicted, etc., dear to Vasudeva? Not so yet. So next one. $80.
I can go.
Please.
Udara sarva evaite.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Gnani tvamaiva me matam. Astitha sahi yuktatma. Mameva nuttamam gatim.
Udaraha iti. Udaraha sarva eva ete. All these are noble. I told you in the classification of the first, taking all people and separating them, these are in a nice, in a better class. All these four are noble. But the knower, jnani tvat, tu atma eva me matam. I deem to be my very self. Asthitaha sahi yuktatma. He has established himself with an integrated self. He has resorted to me alone. Mameva anuttamam gatim. The goal without anything higher. He has resorted to me. Right? And the experience in all sadhana, whether it be in Raja Yoga or Bhakti Yoga or Jnana Yoga, is that the final threshold, after putting in all the effort, you have to exhaust all the effort possible within you. If you're running the race, you have to exhaust all that energy. And the last minute, when the surrender happens, at that point, you say, I put in all the effort now. Lord, only you can take me now beyond this last hurdle, right? It is at that point of surrender. In Raj Yoga, we call it Bindu Vedana. The point, the Bindu is pierced. In Bhakti, there are similar parallels. Bhakti is all about surrender, starting from the beginning. But generally, they say Shravana, Nama Kirtana, listening to the glories of the Lord, etc. Then after that, there are nine such stages of Bhakti. And finally, it is Salokyam, attaining the same level of the Lord, right? Samipyam, coming close to the Lord. Sayujyam, then finally yoked to the Lord without any difference. So this Salokyam, Samipyam, Sayujyam are also that final stage. Sayujyam is not possible without complete surrender. Right? So resorted to me alone, the goal without parallel. Right? In the Jnana Yoga thing also, you may say a kind of mantra is neti neti, not this, not this. That means everything is rejected other than the Lord being the most supreme, right? Right? What else can that be? If it is not this, if it is not this, the only one that remains then is the Lord. So in this way. So all these indeed are noble. Even the first three are dear to me. No devotee of mine is other than dear to Vasudeva. Nahi kaschit mad bhaktah mama Vasudevasya apriyah bhavati. Jnani tu atyartham priyah bhavati iti vishesha. But there is this distinction. Tat kasmat iti. Why is that? Ataha aha. Because it is so said. Jnani tu atma eva na anyaha mattaha iti te mama matam nischyaha. So the answer is that the knower is the very self, not different from me. This is my settled doctrine. Iti me mama matam nischaya. Astitaha arodhum pravrittaha The knower seeks to ascend the peak of knowledge. Sah jnani hi asmat ahameva bhagavan vasudeva na anyah asmi. I myself am the Lord Vasudeva, I am none else. Iti evam yuktatma, with a samahita chittaha, with a concentrated mind. San mam eva param brahma gantavya anuttamam gatim gantum pravrittaha ityartha. With a mind concentrated on this knowledge, he strives to reach me, the supreme Brahman, the goal without parallel. Jnani punarapi stuyate. Now he again praises the Jnani in the next verse, 19. Please.
I can go.
Please.
Bahunam janmana mante ज्ञानवान् प्रपद्यते वासुदेवः सर्वमिति स महात्मा सुदुर्लभः
Sudurlabha, very right, correct. Bahunam janmanam ante. After many births, Jnanavan mam prapadyate. The man of knowledge resorts to me or directly reaches me. Vasudeha sarvamiti, recognizing that Vasudeva is all. Sa Mahatma, that great magnanimous soul, Sudurlabha, is very hard to find, very rare. Already we saw the 1 in 1,000, etc. So this is merely confirming that. And we have the example of our 3 great gurus. Even in such a beautiful Bharatavarsh, such great gurus are rare. Right? Examples of, say, Bhagavan Shankaracharya or Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna or Ramana Maharshi, these are rare. Such a magnanimous soul is rare. Bahunam iti, bahunam janmanam jnanartha samskara ashrayanam ante samaptau. So, at the end of many births, devoted to self-purification, jnanartha samskara ashrayanam, resulting in greater knowledge, prapta paripaka jnanaha, mam vasudevam pratyag atmanam pratyakshatah prapadyate. Gains full illumination and directly reaches me, Vasudeva, the inner self. Katham, how does he do that? Vasudeva sarvamiti, realizing that Vasudeva is all. This idea that Vishnu is the all-pervading, right? The very meaning of the word is all-pervading, right? So how does this consciousness, which is all-pervading, manifest itself in all these different forms? How is this diversity coming from the unity, right? This mystery is what fascinates the Jigyasu. And so then he, with deep conviction, meditates on the Lord, pursuing either the path of Raja Yoga, or he, with great devotion, follows the Bhakti Yoga through the 9 levels, or through the Jnana Yoga, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, exclusively meditates on the Mahavakyas according to Guru's precept, and then reaches the Lord. Whoso thus directly reaches me, Narayana, the self of all, is magnanimous. Ya evam sarvatmanam mam Narayanam pratipadyate saha Mahatma. Na tat samaha anyah asti. There is no one equal to him. Adhikahava, or exceeding him. It is a unique state. Ataha sudurlabha. Manushyanam sahasreshu. He is also referring back to the earlier verse I said, right? 1 in 1,000, etc. C, PG 7.3 above. Hence he is extremely rare. Iti hi uktam. Atmaiva sarvaha vasudevaha ityevam apratipattau karanam uchyate. The cause of the failure to understand all is Vasudeva, the self, is stated. Achha, so we can read maybe this, the last one for today, 20.
I can go, Shankar.
Please.
Kamaistaihi hrutajnana prapadyante anya devata tam niyama mastaya prakrutya niyata swaya.
So, kamaihi taihi hruta ajnanaha prapadyante anya devataha. Ajnanaha are the ignorant, deprived of knowledge. By what? By instrumentally, by desires, variety of cravings. Taihi taihi kamaihi. Khrita, Khrita jnanaha, deprived of knowledge, sorry, not ajnanaha, Khrita jnanaha, robbed of knowledge is probably the correct. Khrita jnanaha, robbed of knowledge by these cravings and desires. Prapadyante, they resort to anya devataha, to other deities. Now here, from the context, whether Bhagavan is meaning other deities outside the Vedic pantheon, Hindu pantheon, or within, is probably not so relevant. The point is the inability to see that the true self manifesting with gunas is Ishvara and the one that is everywhere, right? As Narayana. That is the point. Tam tam niyamam asthaya. They adopt other disciplines. Prakritya, being constrained. Prakritya niyataha svaya. Being constrained by the inborn nature. Kamaihi iti. Kamaihi taihi taihi. Putra pashu swargahadi vishayaihi. Putra, son, progeny is a great animating desire. Deprived of knowledge, the knowledge of discrimination. Pashu, cattle. Now you can interpret wealth in general. Swargadi, heaven, etc. Vishayahi. Because you see, the rigorous practice of the Vedic karma given in Karma Kand leads only as far as Swarga. Right? It is important, very important, better than other karma. But it is to purify the mind to then recognize that which lies beyond Swarga itself, which is the support of Swarga. But if one is, at this point, Bhagavan Shankaracharya is still talking about very noble people who were aiming for heaven. Apakrita viveka vijnanaha, they have been robbed of their discriminative knowledge, knowledge of discrimination. Prapadyanti anya devataha, prapnuvanti vasudevat atmanaha anyaha. They resort to other deities other than Vasudeva, the self. Tam tam niyamam, following well-known disciplines of worship. Devata aradhane prasiddhaha. Yaha yaha niyamaha tam tam asthaya. Whatever particular ones they have been prescribed, they follow those. Ashrite prakritya swabhavena, through their inborn nature. Janma antararjita, by specific impressions acquired in other lives. Samskara visheshena niyataha niyamitaha swaya atmiyaya. So this is now. Maybe probably we can pick up 21 onwards next time. So he has now described the two, those who are drawn towards Vasudeva as the one supreme, and the others who follow other deities as driven by their particular desires. And then what happens to them, he will discuss in the next several verses. And actually we are around 20 here, right? Yeah. Another 10 verses in which Bhagavan gives the complete knowledge of Jnana Vijnana. Okay, so sorry, we didn't ask stop for too many comments or questions, but we can stop now and have some comments or questions from you.
Dr. Shankar, I have a quick question about surrender.
Yes.
So, surrender seems to, sound so easy in the beginning. So like, okay, surrender everything, then, but so the major obstacle for the surrender is this, strong attachment, or, because we are deluded because of the nama rupa, right? So because of that, I mean, at sometime when discussing with you and reading the sacred text, bring mind, and then like a masana vairagya, bring minds that okay, this is not real. This, but again, pulls back.
Mhm, mhm. How about, I would say, the flip side of surrender is acceptance.
Mhm.
So, one way is to turn the mind inward, correct? That was the way we had been talking about when we were reading the sacred texts of, say, Raj Yoga, or right.
Mhm.
Another way is, as long as the mind is turned outward, to say that the Lord is in all these things, right? And then to give it as a riddle to the mind. So how is the Lord in all these things, right? Does that help you?
Right. Yeah.
So in first I talked about, so even in our studies, okay, or in our family, or in all these interactions, right? How does the Lord manifest, right? How is it that same Lord, right? Now, Lord is there, but in some instances it's easier to see, right? Right.
Right.
Sometimes it is harder to see. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So all this progressive our life experience, we can think of it another way. God is giving us this experience, and He is saying, you have two choices. You can accept and see me in all this experience, or if you resist me, it will take a little longer. Right?
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying? So sometimes, so sadhana I think of as an internal and external. So when we sit in meditation, we withdraw the mind inward, and we try to uh, ask that kind of question, like I said, who is the light? What is this light that illuminates even the mind? This is the inward path, correct? Then the mind comes outward, right? Naturally, because the mind's nature is to go outward, correct? Right?
Mhm.
And then we engage in the world, correct? When
Mhm.
we engage in the world, is it possible to then also see that with every cycling in and out, that more of the world is seen as nothing but the play of the Lord, right? Like first time we heard, let's think back to the first time the mind might have heard the word Vishnu. Okay? Vishnu, this concept. How is this one power pervading everywhere, right? Yes or no? The mind first opens up to that, right? Then the next time it sees, uh, we imagine the universe, right? We just sit for a moment and we think of the stars and the planets, and I think, wow, is it possible that there is just one power that permeates and animates all of this, right? So already what has happened is there is a small samskar in the mind that has changed, right? Something has changed, right? The way you see outside. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That
That's
is
right.
progress, right?
Mhm.
Then next time you sit, so every day we sit in meditation, every day we do Sandhya Vandanam. Say, Asvadityo Brahma, Brahmaivaham Asmi, right? Every time we say it with faith, it changes. It changes the mind. It turns one more ratchet. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Right. Yeah.
And so then progressively, if you measure then over 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, it adds up, right? That person becomes a changed individual, right? Another thing, if you say Narayana Suktam, for instance, all our things, right? Narayana Suktam says, Narayanam Mahageyam Vishwatmanam Parayanam. So Narayana is the great, the one to be known, the most ultimate thing to be known. Mahageyam, the one to know. Right? Narayana Paro Jyotir Atma Narayana Paraha is the ultimate light. Paro Jyoti. Atma, self. is Narayana, right? Paramatma. And then Narayana Param Brahma Tattvam Narayana Para. It's also Param Brahma. It is the one that has resulted in this entire universe. Tattvam Narayana, the very essence is Narayana, right? Narayana Parodhyata Dhyanam Narayana Para. He is the ultimate meditator. Dhyata. Dhyanam, the Dhyan itself is Narayana, right? The ultimate meditation is Narayana himself. Then it says, Yatcha kinchit jagat sarvam drishyate he shruyate piva. Whatever we see in the world, whatever is seen, drishyate, shruyate, whatever we hear, all this is Narayana. Right? See, this is a very fundamental change in outlook, correct? Right? So when it is repeated with understanding of the meaning, it changes the outlook. And so through the internal sadhana, external sadhana, definitely there is progress being made. So that's why Bhagavan says Jnana Vijnana. Vijnana is how we see the world after the meditation, right? There is a change in how we see the world. Wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
So that is how it works on the mind, right?
Dr.
I don't know
Shankar,
if I answered your question.
I have a related question
Sure.
on the lines of surrender. I mean, someone once told me that bhakti is not something that you can build on your own, or you choose to develop within yourself. It also comes from the grace of the deity. All you can do is develop bhav. So I'm still not sure what that means, because sometimes it feels as if I cannot do anything at all, except, I mean, just wait for something to happen.
So there is something called descending grace, right? But grace descends only when you have applied 100% full effort. When there is nothing more that you can do in your sadhana, if you truly can say that, it's only at that point that grace descends. Grace does not descend if it is 80%, 90%, 92%, 95%, 97%, 99%. It has to be 100%. That is what is surrender. Right? And so grace will descend, but grace will not descend until self-effort is exhausted completely. Right? So at every instant, if there is a possibility to do that extra bit, grace will wait to see, okay, are you able to give a little more? And it will be very frustrating. I'll point out, it is not like an easy path, right? It will be very frustrating. But that is where our grit as a human being is tested. What is your tenacity? What is your perseverance, right? It will be seem very difficult. It will be easy to give up at some point, but the Lord will test us and see, okay, in spite of this, are you able to? In spite of this, are you able to? Right? And yet, he also sends, or if you, as you conceptualize, as Lord, he or she, first we approach mother as mother. Mother is softer, nicer, easier usually than father, right? Her heart is melted by the child's entreaties a little easier, right? So definitely she sends her helpers. She will not abandon you ever, but she will definitely test you to see that you have reached the mark. And that test is nothing, actually, that test is nothing but our ego. It is only our ego that is standing between us and the mother. So when I say self-effort, the very notion that I am putting the effort has to go. You have to put in as much effort as you think you are doing till you have eradicated that self. Then that Devi will say, okay, now you see, you're an idiot. That's fine. You understood. Now see my power. Right? Correct? So when we approach with that bhav, good word, when we approach with that bhavana, yes, you're right. But we can cultivate that bhavana. We can cultivate our practice. We can make it more intense, right? In every way. And then you're right. There is a point of descending grace. Yes.
Dr. Sankar, one more question.
Yes, yes.
So, among all the gurus, I mean, based on my reading of Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna,
Right.
so, kind of trying to understand from his childhood until, his, last years. So I, kind of trying to relate. So from the beginning, he was, getting the vision of God, right? I'm trying to relate about the surrender. So at what point was he, able to surrender from the beginning, or, he was not, and then, later, so he has with a Saguna Brahman, and later on, without complete surrender, he was not able to get the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and Totapuri pushed him. So, I wonder, beyond that point, and he was able to surrender total, or, from the beginning years. I'm just kind of trying to relate. I don't know.
Yeah. I've read the gospel, and I'll try to relate to you as best as I remember. You may know the details better. So his first experience of samadhi is when he sees a flock of birds flying, right, in a field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember that? So he has, now, if you actually think back, we all have spiritual experiences. It's not that we don't, right? It is just that he remembers them clearly. Okay. If you think back in your own life, when you purify the mind, you will reflect back and see that there are kshanika samadhis for all of us. Okay. But his particular point of surrender comes when, at one point in the Kali temple, he picks up the sword and he says, at this point, I will even give up my bodily form unless you reveal yourself to me. You remember that?
Yeah, clear, sure.
That is the point of surrender. But I'm not suggesting that you all go out there and pick up this is not it's not the intention that one should commit suicide, or this is not the point at all, right? That is symbolic. Okay. It is symbolic of giving up the ego, right? It does not have to be destruction of the physical body. I think it is written like that to make it more understandable to the common person. But that's not the intent at all. You're not saying, I would not advise you to take a sword to your throat and say, if God doesn't show, I'll cut myself. No. Please don't do this. That is not the right way. Okay. The idea is that as you perform more and more the intense meditation, there will come a point where you will see that you are yourself standing in the way of your progress. So that is the meaning of the surrender. In order to make it more understandable to people, it is explained like that. But one should not take these things too literally. Whether Ramakrishna did that or not is at some level irrelevant, because once you have achieved it yourself, then you will understand what he has done. Right? So surrender, I would say that a more practical way is, at every point in life, when we see something in life that we think is contrary to our thinking, right, then let us just question and say, well, I'm thinking this way. The Lord seems to have ordained it this other way, right? What if I do my best effort as given wisdom he has given me, but accept what he has ordained, right? We do this in every small way, right? Sometimes. So, yes, go accomplish something which is even good, and then you encounter an obstacle, right? Does this happen to you? I think everybody can relate to this, right? You go out to do something good and you encounter an obstacle. Does this not happen to you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happen.
It happens all the time. So then how does one react to it? You don't stop doing good, but you accept it as the Lord's, that there is some greater wisdom at work here. Don't we? Right?
Yeah.
So that is surrender. Right? Shivananda has a very nice barometer of spiritual progress. I think I shared it with you at one point. So that again, practical ways, simple ways, that is enough, right? Another thing I'll say is sometimes very sattvic people, like I count all of you in that group, right? Yeah. How can you not know? The light of God shines in you too, right?
Dr.
The
Shankar,
light
I
of
could not hear you
Yeah,
in the
you are
last.
for
We lost
I
you.
said, the light of God. So Bhagavan has said, light of God shines in every living thing, definitely in every human being, right? So how can you be devoid of the knowledge? You must have the knowledge. Who is denying I don't have the knowledge? Well, there is an element of truth. The mind may not clearly see it yet, right? Right. Then the mind itself must be investigated. Why is it standing in the way and drawing the screen? Right. That is one way. The other way is to surrender. Is just say, this gospel is true. It is said in the Gita, Narayana, the self is everywhere. Narayana Suktam says this. Then let me ponder on this. Let me try to relate every life experience to this, right? How is Sattva Rajas Tamas playing and making this beautiful dance of Maya for me, right? And then slowly, as you see, you will see that it is Sattva Rajas Tamas, nothing else. There's nothing else in animating the world at all than this, right? So that will slowly, as we apply again and again and see the result of that, it will become clearer. And that is a surrender, right? Maybe I didn't answer so well this time.
Well, it was delightful. Thank you.
we will reflect and try again. But I am telling you that don't feel that you don't know or that you're not surrendered. Right? The fact that you find joy in itself is itself indication of surrender, right? Because that Anandamaya kosha is inside us, right? Inside all this. If that Ananda can come out of this, it means there is enough transparency in the other koshas that it is shining through. Right? If in satsang you can feel joy, this is surrender. This is wisdom. Right? That itself is the highest sign. If you find the words of the Bhagavad Gita delightful, that is wisdom. If you find the Charitra of Sri Ramakrishna delightful, that is wisdom. Right? That is surrender. Ancha? Any other questions, or shall we say Shanti Mantram? Okay. Acha. Om Tachamyura Vrinimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastu Naham Swastirmanushebyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your Saturday.